Well, regretfully have to start morning mocha this morning, kind of on a somber note. Um, uh, we are so sorry to have to report, but yet we can still celebrate that our dear, sweet, beloved Mother Smith, the mother of Ron Morton and Michael Smith, the Smith family, Sister Diana, she went home to be with the Lord on this morning. And so we are lifting up our prayers for the Smith, the Morton family, and all that are connected to that family. She was a very, very sweet, wonderful soul. Not only was she a mother, a member of Canaan Worship Center. Wow, I didn't really go on the old school Canaan Worship Center, but she was a part of our Morning Mocha family. And it always gave me a joy to be able to greet her and Deacon Ron each morning that they joined us. She's certainly going to be missed, and our prayers are being lifted up before God on behalf of the entire family. Family, I want you to be reminded. I know many of them are already on this morning. Be reminded that God is our refuge and strength. He is a very present help in our times of trouble. And so this is the time where we lean upon him, we depend upon him, and we are confident that by his grace, by his mercy, we're going to get through this. We're going to get through this together. And I do mean we, because we're all in this together. My heart goes out for the family. And I ask you, Morning Mocha family, do as you normally do, lift this family up in prayer, that God will strengthen them in their time of need. And again, I just want to say on behalf of myself and Lady Ann that we certainly love you and we are here for you. And I think I can commit the entire Canaan Worship Center church family to in saying that uh, we are here for you, and we're going to do whatever we can to help you to get through this situation. Again, Lady Ann, I see her popped up on the screen there, and I think I missed that, y'all. So if I miss, I don't know how I keep missing her getting by me. I guess I get distracted with trying to do other things, making sure that I'm well ready to go into what I need to go into. But again, let's say good morning to Lady Ann Cobbins. Good morning, sweetheart. God bless you. God bless you on this thankful Thursday morning. We are praying for all of the families that are yet dealing with either sickness or bereavement within your family circles. Um, we just know that God is an able God. Um, Once again, sadly, we have to report also, if you haven't heard by now, there was a shooting, school shooting on yesterday in Arlington, Texas. One of the students pulled out a gun and shot um, a teacher, faculty member, and one of his fellow students. Now, I understand that uh, there were some mitigating circumstances. This wasn't just a random shooting, so to speak, and I don't think the shooter intended to hurt people other than his target. But I was watching the report this morning, and the family was saying that the young man had been constantly bullied. He was constantly bullied at school, and he was picked on. Um, Even physically assaulted at times. There were times that his money was taken from him. And I guess the young man just felt like this was the thing that he needed to do in order to defend and protect himself. Now, I commend the family with acknowledging the fact that the the measures that he took to somewhat try to resolve or dissolve some of the issues that he was experiencing at the time weren't necessarily the ideal measures to take. Uh, However, the system, so to speak, has to take some of the blame for this. It baffles my mind, and I've experienced this even within my own family, how when things are reported to faculty members, to the people who are supposed to be protecting and covering our children. When children try to do the right thing and report to teachers, faculty, or whatever, that they're being bullied and that they're constantly in a hostile environment, little to no attention is given to that person's plea, their plea for help. And that's sad. It's always a matter of reactive measures being taken after the fact. And most of the time, the one that fall in the greatest trouble is the one who's been bullied and finally decided, I can't take anymore. And they retaliate against those who are bullying them, and they are put in the worst light. Now, please understand, I am by no means suggesting that young people go to those extremes to take matters into their own hands. But what I am saying is that those who are in charge of educating and even protecting our children, because they have a certain responsibility, a certain level of responsibility to protect our children from situations like that they need to be more proactive. They need to be more vigilant in knowing when such things are occurring and not just sweeping it under the rug simply because they don't want to have to deal with it. Attention needs to be brought to these type of situations. And furthermore, parents who have children who are doing the bullying, and when they are made aware that their children are doing such things, they need to take on the responsibility of a parent, sit that kid down and insist on them doing the right thing, even with regards to respecting other people, respecting their person, respecting them as an individual. Because listen, sometimes parents call themselves protecting their children from any kind of form of discipline and things of that nature. And you might be setting your child up to get seriously hurt. Because we know nowadays people are only going to take so much. They get to a certain level where they feel like enough is enough, and they wound up snapping. Is it right? No, not necessarily. But is it understandable to some degree? Yes, it is understandable. I believe every last one of us that are connected this morning through this live stream, all of us have a breaking point. All of us have a breaking point. All of us have a level of tolerance that once it's crossed, we're going to respond in some kind of way. And it may not always be good. Let's just be honest about that. Now, we have to kind of discipline ourselves to keep our emotions under control to the degree that we don't just go off and do something just drastic and that might wound up being devastating to ourselves or to another family, of course. But everyone has their tipping point, if you will. And, children, young people, teenagers, even in their late teens and even into their early adulthood, they're still developing emotionally. They're still processing and maturing, and they're still trying to figure out, how do I deal with such feelings? Well, the reality is some people later on in life, they still are trying to figure that thing out. Age doesn't necessarily equate to maturity. I believe that maturity is intentional. You mature because you want to become more mature. You want to develop into being the best you that you can be. I know people well in their 60s that are yet very, very, very extremely immature. And those kind of people, when the nerves are touched in a negative way, they respond irrationally. And so once again, we have a job to do. We have a job to do. I'm telling you, it seems like our work will never end. Believe it or not, that's one of the reasons why I do what I do on a daily basis. I tell you all the time that all I want to do is help to add value to the lives of people. I want to see people live their best life. I want to see people live a blessed life. I want to see people prosper and get ahead in life. And in order for that to happen, people must be sponges of wisdom. We need to try to soak up every ounce of wisdom that we possibly can. Anytime we have an opportunity to hear words of wisdom from someone that will benefit our lives, instead of turning it off and turning it away, you need to soak it up. You know, one thing that happens with me, if I'm in the midst of channel surfing and I hit a channel, regardless as to whether I've been on that channel before, I've seen that person on television before or not, if for that hot second that I've landed on that channel and that speaker or someone says something that catches my attention, that I think or believe that I can learn from or benefit from, I'll stop. And I'll listen. I'll see what it is they are really talking about. And if it's wisdom that I can benefit from, I take that wisdom, put it in my toolbox, and be ready to use it whenever it is necessary. Andrea, bless our little sis. Good morning to you. And that's what we really need to train our children to do. We need to let our children be able to see and understand that self-control is much more beneficial than flying off the handle and doing things that are self-destructive. We got to make that type of approach to life more fashionable than what it presently is. Now, again, my heart goes out to the young man who's the suspect in the shooting. Well, he's really not a suspect because he admitted to doing what he did. My heart goes out to him. I can only imagine what that young man may have gone through over periods of his life, if the reports are accurate in that he was severely bullied. That's what I'm trying to say. If he was severely and constantly bullied, he may have just reached his boiling point. And I think at times when you get situations like that, instead of throwing the kid away, someone needs to make sure he gets the help that he needs, the mental and emotional help that he needs. And when I'm speaking of mental and emotional help, I am not suggesting that the young man is crazy. No. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that there are times when a person just needs to know how to manage their stress levels. And that's not an easy proposition. That's not an easy thing to do. There are a lot of you that are listening right now. I'm quite sure that there are some of you that fall into that category where you simply need to learn how to manage your stress levels, how to respond to certain situations. Again, I try to be as transparent with you all as I possibly can. I think some of you have heard me talk about the fact that there was a time when you pushed my button and you did not like at all what you were going to get, and you got it quick, fast, and in a hurry. You know, I generally thought of myself always as a very, very nice person, but I had my level of tolerance, and it used to be much lower than it is right now. The reason why my level of tolerance has raised to the level that it is now is because I have matured. I found an alternative way to handle my stress when people are really getting on my nerves or when they have pushed my button. I started doing something that some of you might think is just crazy. It got to the point, and this was in my teenage years, wherein if people were irritating me and pushing me to the brink of reacting very, very negatively, very badly, if you will, I started the practice of laughing at the person. Now, initially, it was difficult. It was difficult. I would laugh, but I wouldn't be tickled. But this was the way I used. This was the only way I could kind of release some of this built up, pent up frustration that had built up against this individual as a result of them doing what they were doing to me. This was my way of releasing it. Initially, I would laugh, but I was not tickled. But as I matured, I started laughing and I was tickled. You know why? Because I came to the realization that they were operating out of their ignorance and immaturity. And I decided that I would no longer lower myself to their level of actions, reactions, or however you want to classify it. I just decided I'm not gonna do that anymore. And you know, I'm fortunate in that I learned it early enough in life that I didn't carry that type of attitude and spirit over into my adult life. I learned to do this during my mid-teens, and really it was because of something that my mother said to me when she told me. She said, "Listen, I know at times you get frustrated and angry and upset, but the way you handle it, I'm paraphrasing now, it's not always the best way to handle it." She said to me, "There are going to be times in your life once you become an adult where you're going to have to learn how to manage your anger, because if you don't, you're going to find yourself losing your livelihood as a result of certain things occurring in your life." She was basically trying to tell me how to hold on to a job when I don't like what happens, you know, on a job. You know, she was telling me ahead of time. And I found that to be very valuable later on in life, because I did go through some things where I was challenged in that area. And that enemy, I'm just going to tell y'all this. I don't think I've ever told you all this before. That enemy tried to resurface those kind of feelings in my heart and in my spirit in my early adulthood when I was employed with the telephone company. I had a manager that was treating me so badly. And he would do some things, man, that it just didn't make any sense. And I had just gotten tired of him. And that old man, I'm talking about that spirit man of mine that used to be the igniter of my angry passion, if you would. That old man said to me, you know where he parks his car in the garage, and you know he leaves work later than everybody else. Sometimes he's almost the last person to leave the office and the building. Said you ought to just meet him at his truck after work and just put a whooping on him. I'm just telling y'all the truth. And I had to talk myself off the wall. And thank God for that talk that my mother had with me years prior to. Came back to mind. You can't do that. You got a family now. Besides that, you do something like this, like that, you're most certainly going to go to jail. Then furthermore, I had no clue as to what the man probably carried with regards to trying to protect himself. He could have had a gun or whatever. He could have shot me, whatever, So again, these are kind of lessons and wisdom we should share with our young people. Just sit down and talk with them about certain things like that. Listen, you got to be careful once again with your approach with it. Don't always be that that parent that's just going to come down hard on that individual without first trying to understand um, where your young person is coming from. What are they actually dealing with? Because sometimes parents are clueless as to what some of these young people are going through and dealing with. You need to sit down, let them talk to you, let them talk it out, let them be real with you, and then give them some wise advice. Be stern, be firm. Let them know the consequences that come with certain actions, and let them know that you don't condone, neither will you tolerate them acting in such a manner. But you got to take the time to do that. Show them some love, show them some compassion, show them genuine concern. All right. And I tell you, when you do that, it will make better for your entire family. All right, let's get back to the discussion that we started on the other day. I started talking with you about the discipline of good stewardship, and I led off by giving you the academic definition of stewardship, and I'm going to repeat it this morning. Stewardship is the conducting, supervising, or managing of something, the careful and responsible management of something entrusted to one's care. And I want to remind you that one of the points that I made on the other day, that everything in life involves some form of stewardship. The fact that you have life says that you've been given the responsibility of stewardship. You are a steward over this life that God has given you. Therefore, you are responsible and even obligated to conduct yourself in a way that is beneficial for yourself and others around you. You should supervise your life or manage your life in the most productive way possible. You should be careful and responsible with managing your life. I also gave you the academic definition of responsible, and it is able to answer for one's conduct or obligations. Responsible means to be trustworthy, able to choose for oneself between right and wrong. It is conduct. Being responsible is conduct that serves the greater good of a situation. When you're being responsible in a situation, you are conducting yourself in a manner that is for the greater good of that situation, whatever that may be. Again, every one of us over our lifetimes, we've been laden with some form of responsibility. And I got into the other day the family responsibility or stewardship. You have stewardship with regards to your marriage. You have the responsibility to supervise or manage your marriage in a way that honors God, in a way that honors your spouse, and in a way that creates a greater good for your entire family. You have parental responsibility. You have been assigned the obligation and the responsibility to manage the little lives that God has put into your care. You are your child's life manager up until they get to the point where they are mature enough to manage their lives for themselves. See, some of us think that once our children get to the level or the age where they are able to dress themselves and feed themselves, then for the most part, your job as a parent is over. And that is absolutely not the case. I believe that to some degree, we have some responsibility as parents to help manage the lives of our children throughout a lifetime. Now, don't get that twisted. I'm not saying that you go and you force and tell your adult children what to do. But what I am saying is that if, for whatever reason, you continuously maintain a certain degree of wisdom, a certain level of wisdom that your children, even adult children, may not possess or have not come to the point of possessing. You should be ready and available to offer your wisdom when invited to. Let me say that when you're invited to offer your wisdom, you should be ready to do so at a moment's notice when it comes to your children and their needs. So that's what family stewardship is all about. And I could get into some other things, but I don't want to stretch that out too far. But then let's talk about career or job responsibility or stewardship. And that encompasses your commitment to carrying out your assigned task. Now, I know this issue right here is going to make some people very uncomfortable because in a lot of cases, people work harder to get out of work than they do to carry out their work assignments. And that's not being a good steward. You got to think about the fact that when you were hired on and you were given a certain job description and you made a contract with your employer that you will give them 8 hours work for 8 hours pay, or however long the time was designated for. You made this contract that you were going to give your very best in terms of carrying out your assigned task. And you did so because you were looking for and you expect a reward as a result of doing what you have promised to do. See, here's what you got to understand. When that employer employs you, they are literally making you a steward within their company or corporation. You might not be a supervisor or a manager by title, but by default, you are a supervisor or a manager over the tasks that you have been assigned. I know this is going to turn some people off because some people feel like, well, they work me, and they're not compensating me fairly. Well, if you really feel that way, instead of slacking on the job, maybe what you need to do is start looking for another job. Look for a job wherein you feel like the compensation would be fair and equitable for the service that you're going to provide for that company. But so often people feel as though it's okay for them to be slack in their responsibilities when it comes to their job commitment. Your good stewardship on your job or in your career entails being personally accountable. What do you mean, Bishop? Personally accountable. You're prompt. You get to work on time. And a lot of people would say, well, if you're on time, that means you're late. You're only on time when you get there a few minutes early. That should be a practice. I think you should always leave a cushion with regards to time and arriving at work or whatever, because anything could happen. You could run into traffic, and some people will be like, well, I don't care. That's not my fault. They ought to simply understand that. Well, maybe they should, but they don't necessarily have to. And at the end of the day, when you fall into those situations, you are the one who's going to be held accountable, because they'll conclude that you're not making the necessary preparations to arrive at work on time. I've seen people get to work late when I was in the workforce. They get to work late and then they'll take forever just to get started actually working. They'll go get their coffee. They'll sit down and eat their breakfast or a snack. You're already on the clock. You're already late. But yet and still you say, I got to have my coffee. I got to do this before I get started and everything. I don't know how much that happens today, But when I was in the workforce, I used to see it all the time. That was poor stewardship because you were lacking, that individual was lacking in the area of personal accountability. Another element of that personal accountability is honesty. Being honest with your employer. Now, if you can't say amen, say ouch here. I know that I know of many cases of many people who called in sick because they wanted to do something else that day, and they called in sick, said, I can't be at work today because I'm not feeling well. I'm sick. Knowing that was not true. I'd never used that one, not that I can remember, because number one, I didn't want to declare something over my life and it wound up being true. Yeah. I wanted to save my sick days for when I was really sick and needed to be off. You know, we should be honest in reporting certain information that is required of us on our jobs. You know, if you were asked, did you take care of such and such thing, you said yes, and you really hadn't, that's not being honest. And you do that a number of times and your employer finds out, you'll find yourself in the unemployment line. But as it pertains to the discussion for today, that's not being a good steward. And we as professing believers, we should be good stewards in our careers and our job responsibility. Another element of that is integrity. What is integrity? I like to define integrity as doing the right thing when no one's watching you. Can you be trusted to work alone? Do you work just as hard unsupervised as you do when you know the supervisor is breathing down your neck? Well, if you're a person of integrity, then you'll put in the time and the work as if the supervisor is constantly watching you, whether they are or not. Because here's the thing that we got to consider. Even though the supervisor may not be watching, God sees everything that we do. So we got to be people of integrity. We've got to be good stewards over our careers and our jobs. And let me tell you this. When you are, even when you think people are not noticing and watching, they are. And when you're doing the right thing, operating with promptness, honesty, and integrity, it only serves to put you in a better position, to put you in a better light. There have been people I know on jobs who have been promoted into management, even though on paper they may not have been qualified to work in a manager or supervisor position, but because of their promptness, honesty, integrity, and their productiveness. The powers that be were watching and observing the individual, and they concluded that the individual had what it takes to be a good manager within that company or corporation. Well, let's talk about fiscal or financial responsibility or stewardship. This is all a matter of how you handle your income. Whew. Okay, get your towel out so you can dab your forehead because you're going to start sweating a little bit. I know some of you are. Listen, God calls for us to be good stewards over that which we possess, that which he entrusts into our possession or management. And when you talk about fiscal and financial responsibility, the first question that comes to mind is, how do you manage your income? How do you manage your income? You hear people say all the time, well, I'm just not making enough money. Is that really the case? Is it that you're not making enough money, or is it more so that you're not being as disciplined as you need to be with the money that is placed in your hand? Are you a saver or are you a spendthrift? There are a lot of people that fall into that category of being a spendthrift because they're trying to keep up with their peers. You see people purchasing things or, living in certain areas and things of that nature, and you feel like that you should be able to do what they do. But sometimes what you need to do is, instead of envying that person and trying to immediately accumulate what they've already accumulated, you need to know the backstory. You look at people who are prosperous and doing well, you might discover through their backstory that they had years of sacrifice where they were very, very careful with how they handled their money. They were savers. They didn't try to live above their means. They didn't put themselves in a position where they had more end of the month than they had money at the end of the month. They were not buying things they could not afford and doing things that were not within their budgetary means. I think to some degree, what messes up a lot of people financially is access to credit. And that can only go so far and last so long. People feel like, well, if I don't have to pay for it now, I'll pay for it later. And I'll enjoy the fruits of this right now and just pay for it later. The problem with that, they really pay for it later. They really, really pay for it later. Some people are in debt to this day up to their eyeballs. And it would take a lifetime for them to pay off that debt because they were fiscally and financially irresponsible. Do you understand that debt makes you a slave? The Bible says that the borrower is slave to the lender. That lender basically has taps on and control over that borrower's life. It causes your freedoms to be limited. You're very limited with what you can do. Now, I don't profess to be this financial guru, but I have learned over the years how wise it is to try to stack up enough money, first of all, that you could call an emergency fund, that you can tap into anytime an emergency arises. Well, I'm not making enough money to do that, Bishop. Again, is that really the case? You're telling me that you can't put aside $20, $25 every pay period? Well, you might say, well, that ain't nothing. Well, I tell you what, keep stacking up $20 to $25. Send me $20 to $25 every week, and I'll tell you how much it comes out to after a given period of time. And I guarantee you'll be saying, can I have that back? Why? Because it's added up. My dad taught me something wonderful about taking a little money and setting it aside, and how a little money builds up. My dad was the type of person that if he was walking anywhere and he saw a coin as small as a penny on the ground, he would pick it up and put it in his pocket. A lot of people would say, oh, that's just a penny, and keep on walking. And I remember one time I was with him and he did that. And I was like, why you pick that up? He said, penny, nickel, dime, quarter, add them up, they'll make $1. And I was like, whoa. Ever since then, I've been a person who saves change, my pocket change. I put it into a container on a regular basis. I just, whatever's in my pocket at the end of the day, I dump it into a container. I've been doing this for years. And a few years back, I decided, well, let me count to see how much I have just in this change that I had been dumping in this container for a few years. Come to find out, I had nearly $1,000, nearly $1,000 just from the pocket change that I would have left over from what I did within the day. For instance, I went to the store, say I went to Quick Trip, and I bought some things and I paid for it with dollar bills, and they gave me back coins and change. Whatever that was at the end of the day, it got dumped into the little kitty. It adds up. It really adds up. I once nearly paid for an entire vacation from monies that I just arbitrarily set aside. When you learn how to save and not be a spendthrift, and I thank those of you that are giving the comments about the Dave Ramsey program. I know everybody may not embrace this program, but it is a very good program, and it works for those who will follow the program. I'm trying to think of what the name of the first book I read. I think it was Money Matters, or whatever it was. It really transformed First Lady and myself. It transformed our approach to handling money. And again, if you're disciplined enough to follow the principles within that program, or if you just pick up his book and read it and follow those principles, it will work. Jackie Burns, you said my change at the end of last year was $800. See, that's what I'm saying. That's your seed money right there. That can start a good savings. But again, you can't get to the point and say, "Oh, I got this $800. Let me go spend it on something. Let me splurge on something." Why not keep building on those things? I've always had this principle of handling my finances. I remember when I was in my early teens and I was playing for my dad's church, Macedonian Missionary Baptist Church. And watch this, y'all. They were paying me $15 a month. I mean, $15 a week. $15 a week. And the minute I started getting that $15 a week, my dad said, "Well, you don't need lunch money from me anymore." I'm like, "Oh." He said, "You got your own money. You buy your own lunch." And back then, I would spend $1 a day on lunch. So when I would get my little check cash, $15 check, when I would get it cash, I would take $5 and set it aside to pay for my lunch for the week. That was my lunch money for the week. I would take $10 and put it under my mattress every week. I had a special spot under my mattress. Yeah, y'all saying, "Oh, he's really old school." Yeah, I was a kid then, but this is what I did. I was about 13, 14 years old. And I didn't bother any of that $10, those $10. I didn't bother it for quite some time. And knowing that my dad had kind of retired himself, so to speak, from dishing out extra money to me, because now I have a job, if you will, I decided I needed a new suit of clothing, suit, tie, shirt, and shoes. And so I decided, let me count my money to see where I am with regards to that. Wound up having more than $250 accumulated under that mattress, just from sticking those $10 in there every week and not bothering. And I was able to go out and buy my first pair of Florsham shoes. I bought a 3-piece suit and a tie. And when I came home from shopping, my dad looked at me and he said, "Where did you get all of this from? How did you do this?" And when I told him my system, he was very proud of me. And I had a little money left over. and I'm still pretty much that way today. I can't be as strict as I used to be with it. Well, I haven't been as strict as I used to be with it. But again, it has helped me to handle my finances over the years. Listen, all it takes is discipline, a commitment to being disciplined with handling your finances. Of course, I paid tithe and offering as well. I did that from the very start. So I guess there were times that, within the month, I would just pay so much based on what I had received because I was taught to tithe early. So that was important as well. I know some of you don't want to hear that. You got to get to the point where you understand that tithing is not about the money that you're giving. It's about you trusting God with the money that you have. Some people look at the tithe and say, "Well, I can't afford to tithe." In reality, you really can't afford not to. Because if you're a person of faith, you've got to be able to trust God at any cost. And when God is the one giving it to you, what is it really costing you for you to give back to God that which he asked of you? So again, with financial stewardship, one aspect that you got to consider is, ask yourself the question, am I a saver or a spendthrift? You don't want to be a spendthrift, because when you're a spendthrift, you're going to eventually find yourself constantly in a hole. The other question you would have to ask yourself is, how diligent are you with fulfilling your financial obligations? Number one, when we talk about financial obligations and fulfilling those, how well are you taking care of your family? Is your family a top priority with regards to your fiscal and financial responsibility? Now, that might sound like a crazy question to you, but there are some people who get paid and have almost no regard to their families. They'll go out and splurge on themselves, and they'll do it in a number of ways. You got family at home, but the minute you get your check, you go running off to the club and start buying drinks as though you're never going to run out of funds. And then before you know it, the weekend is up and you're trying to find someone to lend you money to help you pay your rent. No, that's being irresponsible. Your family has to become your priority. After paying your tithes, you got to make sure the rent is taken care of. You got to make sure that there's food on the table. You got to make sure that the utilities are taken care of before you do anything. Those things ought to be the first things you take care of. After paying tithes, I had my way of setting my priorities as to what was going to get paid. Now, again, I was paying everything, but if things got into a tight situation for whatever reason, because every now and then unexpected things pop up and you wound up having to divert some of your funds to addressing a specific issue, and hopefully you'll be able to recover before you really feel the full impact of this pop-up issue that you had to divert your funds to. But I had set priorities on how I was going to pay things. Tithes, I tried to make sure my tithes were paid first and foremost. I said I would pay the rent because I always needed a roof over my head. The next thing that was a priority would be food, because I definitely needed something to eat. The next thing that would be a priority for me would be my car payment, if I had one. because I needed transportation to get back and forth to work. And I had all this rationalized out in my mind. The next thing would be utilities, because I needed things such as electricity, water, gas, and things of that nature. And what was the final thing? But I left utilities for last. Why is that? More or less, it is because I figured that I can learn how to survive without certain utilities. And the first utility that would get paid would be water. I've had times in my life, not that my electricity was shut off, but power was knocked out during a storm. Learned how to survive in the midst of that. So if I can survive in the midst of the storm for a few days without having utilities, I know I could go longer if I had to do so. That's the reason why that was so far down on the list of priorities. But I made it my business to try to do all that I could to maintain. Oh, I know what I was going to say was going to be last. If I had any kind of credit card debt, that got paid last. That got paid last. And it's, please understand, notice I said it got paid last. I didn't say it didn't get paid at all. You know, I may have been guilty at times of slow pay, but I was never guilty of no pay. That's right. Why? Because I made that agreement, and it was my responsibility to make sure that I honored the agreements that I made. When you sign a credit card application or whatever, you are actually making a contract. You got to pay your bills, though, fam, people. That's good stewardship. When you pay your bills, it is. And when you have a good credit score, it says something about your character. It says that you're honorable, trustworthy. Now, again, before y'all get in a tizzy, and I started having people doing a lot of pushback. Well, sometimes things happen. I understand that things happen where people fall on hard times, and sometimes people who are of great financial integrity go through difficult times and their credit scores take a hit and all that. That kind of thing, in most cases, is not done intentionally, especially with people who are normally they are people who are very responsible with their finances. I understand that happens, but people who just neglect and refuse to pay their bills and to pay them on time, that says something about your character. Let me give you this last piece, and we'll pick this up again tomorrow, because I think this is worth continuing the discussion. Care of possessions is a responsibility or stewardship. How you take care of what you already have. Do you clean your house, or do you just let it remain trashed out? That's not good stewardship. I believe even keeping your car clean, keeping the maintenance up on your car. If you don't, that's not good stewardship. You're literally throwing away money. When you allow your vehicle to fall into disrepair, there have been numbers of occasions where I've seen people's cars just fall apart simply because they refused to change the oil. Some people conclude, well, there's oil in there, but it's dirty. It creates sludge in the engine, in the motor. That's not being a good steward. And the shame of it is, a lot of oil changes, what, $30, $60, whatever, every 3-4 months. You don't want to do that, but yet still, you go buy the nicest car that you think you can afford. This is what gets me. You go buy this nice car. You'd have made this investment of 20, 25, even $30,000. You drive it off the lot. You flossing. You showing everybody your new car. 2 weeks later, it's filthy. 2 weeks later, you start getting dents and dings in it, and you can't get them fixed because you still haven't put insurance on the car. I'm going to really make some of y'all uncomfortable right here. I don't see how people ride around for 2 years on a temporary tag. But they kind of doing some things to eliminate that kind of thing now. Used to be that they would write with a magic marker on that temporary tag to show when it expires and everything. And people used to strategically take a magic marker and change the numbers, give them more time. And it was simply because they hadn't laid aside enough money to pay the taxes on that car so they could get it registered. Wow. But nowadays, you're not getting that temporary tag that's been filled in with a Sharpie, that black Sharpie. No. They're typing those jokers out. They're running them through a printed machine now. And that's how you're getting them assigned to you. You can't play those games anymore. But you got to learn how to be fiscally responsible. And really, sometimes you just need to use the better part of wisdom. How many of you knew or know that, and I'm not suggesting that you always do this, but if you just absolutely cannot pay the taxes on that particular vehicle, either you need to buy a vehicle that would cost you less money, or if you can afford to do this, tack a little bit more onto your monthly payment and have your taxes financed. You can do that. It is possible. But be careful with doing that, because you don't want to put yourself in a position where your car payment is more than you can afford as well. I'm just talking about being financially responsible. If you're going to buy a car, be able to register that car. Make it legal. Have insurance on it. And don't just put insurance on it for the sake of getting it registered. Put insurance on it. Keep insurance on it. Pay your insurance. Why? Because the minute you decide, well, I don't need to pay insurance no more, and I got my tags and I can just ride around like this, that's when you're going to have that accident, possibly total out your car. You're not going to have full coverage, and you're going to wind up with a bill, a financial bill that you're going to be tagged with. It's going to be hanging around your neck until you get it paid off. And you've just sank yourself deeper into debt simply because you refuse to be fiscally and financially responsible. Okay. You know what? That's it for today. I think that's all. That's all. I hope I've given you enough to chew on. Think about it. Think about it. And know this: as you're being fiscally, financially responsible, as you're being responsible with your career and your job, your family, the care of your possessions, believe it or not, in all of that, you are honoring God. Why? Because you are applying the wisdom of God that you find in scriptures to your personal life. And thereby you are benefiting and tremendously being blessed as a result of. Okay. Well, God bless y'all. That's it for today. Let me continue to encourage you all. If you haven't picked up my 3 books, get my 3 books. Let them be a blessing to you. And if you already have them, buy another set just to bless somebody else with. All right. Can we do that? Will y'all do that for me? All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Love you. God bless all of you. And until tomorrow morning, as I often say, my desire is that you have a blessed, wonderful, and even prosperous rest of your day. God bless you.